I think we're done. The hockey's been so long. I think people in the mosh pit are getting tired.
the
Congo boys. They're grabbing water as they run by like the marathon guys.
What do you do when the entire world worships your talent, but you've lost the will to use it? He had it all. Fame, trophies, the roar of a nation behind him. But at the peak of his stardom, Guy Lafleur didn't just walk away, he vanished. No farewell tour, no warning, just silence. What if the story behind an NHL legend hides a secret that almost derailed his rise? You'll want to stick around for this. Night after night, in the bright lights of Montreal's clubs and under the glow of street lamps, he partied harder than anyone, yet still left defenders trailing in his wake. He won 5 Stanley Cups and claimed the Art Ross 3 times, yet his real triumph was pulling off a double life. Rockstar nights, championship nights. This isn't your typical athlete biography. It's the untold saga of Guy Lafleur, and you're about to see how one backyard rink in small-town Quebec shaped an icon who would shock the world. He was born September 20th, 1951, and from the moment young Guy strapped on his first stick, fate was set. In Thurso, a pulp mill town with frozen winters, his father built a backyard arena just for him. While other kids watched cartoons or played in the snow, Guy spent winter after winter weaving through makeshift defenders, scoring imaginary game winners. He practiced so obsessively that some nights he'd sleep in his gear, ready for dawn's first light. By age 10, he smashed youth league records, 70 goals in a season, turning heads across Quebec. Word spread fast. People whispered that something magical was unfolding on that frozen patch in Thurso. His breakthrough came at the revered Quebec International Pee Wee Tournament, where he wasn't just good, he was electrifying. Scouts flocked. A future superstar was budding. That's where he picked up the nickname Le Turbo de Thurso, later known as Le Démon Blonde, a name that captured his golden hair and destructive speed, coined by broadcaster Jean-Bernard Rainville. Smooth on skates with a quick release shot and an instinct for goals nobody had seen, he was Nashville autospeed incarnate. By 1969, Guy signed with the Quebec Remparts of the QMJHL. Those were the games where his legend exploded. 130 goals and 209 points in just 62 games during the 1970-71 season. That kind of scoring was unheard of. Even Mario Lemieux needed 70 games for 133 goals. And yet, previews only scratched the surface of what he was capable of. Night after night, he single-handedly electrified the arena, drawing kids and fans deep into the magic of hockey. Montreal's general manager Sam Pollock saw the writing on the wall. He orchestrated a draft pick heist, trading players and picks until he secured first overall in 1971. It was a calculated move that became one of the slickest plays in draft history. He faced a choice: the wizard Lafleur or rival marquee Marcel Dion. Pollock chose the rebel with the golden hair, and the city would forever change. His rookie season felt like walking into the deep end. Imagine joining a locker room filled with Hall of Famers: Beliveau, Mahovlich, Lemaire. Pressured, overshadowed, expected to carry a dynasty. He barely saw ice, and some scoffed when his 29 goals and 35 assists placed only 5th among Montreal scorers. Critics argued he wasn't ready. He wore a helmet. Uncommon then. And they mocked that he looked timid. Dion was scorching in Detroit. The whispers started, what if the flower wilted? But inside the locker room, men like Larry Robinson and Scotty Bowman saw what fans didn't. Robinson said years later, Guy had all the tools, he just needed time. Those early seasons were absorbing school. Guy watched, saw and learned. How Beliveau glided, how Lemaire dissected, how Corno exploded. Then, in 1974, he made a choice. Off with the helmet, time to reclaim his power. And just like that, everything clicked. The result? 53 goals and 119 points in 1974-75. 6 straight seasons with at least 50 goals and 100 points. Montreal hadn't seen a streak like that, ever. Every night he was a fireworks show on ice, skating smooth, scoring with clockwork precision. From 1976 to 1979, he led the NHL in points 3 times, won 4 straight Stanley Cups, and embodied that rare cinematic momentum only legends can conjure. But remember the mystery. How did a die-hard party guy sustain this level? That's where the duality starts to shine. He was chain-smoking in nightclubs, driving Cadillacs through Montreal's dawn, showing up to practice on fumes. But his performance never slipped. How could he lead the league in scoring and live like he did? This tension, rockstar life meets championship quiet, was the secret to his allure. In 1977, he dazzled during the Canada Cup, clinching gold for Canada. He also claimed Hart and Pearson MVP awards. He scored 136 points in 1976-77, still a Canadiens record, and 60 goals in 77-78, tying the franchise single-season high. Montreal had never seen skating grace and offensive artistry so flamboyant. A linchpin in a dynasty, a centerpiece of legend. Yet beneath the grandeur, hints of fragility emerged. Reporters caught whispers of stress, the grind, the burnout. He crashed his Cadillac in 1981. A metal post pierced the windshield, missing his head by inches. He began retreating from the spotlight. Injuries slowed him, and critics again questioned his grit. But teammates defended him, saying he absorbed hits and never retaliated. He refused to be defined by rebounds or scars. He was art on ice, not brute force, and it worked. By 1981, injuries and changes in hockey left him behind. He briefly retired in 1985, then returned for stints with the Rangers and Nordiques, not as a superstar, but as a mentor. He helped bring an identity to a floundering Quebec team, guiding young Joe Sakic. His final NHL game? A standing ovation testament to a man who transcended the sport. Montreal froze. Each touch brought cheers. Each shift was a moment of gratitude. He stood in Montreal's glittering spotlight, a king once more, accepting his third Art Ross as the NHL's top point scorer. Only another sign that the momentum wasn't slowing. Fast forward to 1976 to 77, and he exploded for 136 points in just 70 games, setting a Canadiens franchise record that still echoes today. That's a rate so electric it demands attention. He racked up not just another scoring title, but his second Art Ross, and swept in his first Hart Memorial Trophy as the league's MVP. And then he did it again the next year, repeating as MVP, stamping his name on back-to-back awards that blasted through any lingering doubt. By then, Lafleur was the defining talent of his generation. He didn't rise alone. His line with Steve Shutt and Jacques Lemaire felt like a trio forged in fire. So in sync, opponents claimed they must have grown up playing together. Shutt would say, "With Guy, you simply needed to find space. He'd either set you up or bury it himself." That kind of lethal chemistry forced rival coaches to rethink everything, scrambling to draft game plans with the sole mission: stop number 10 at all costs. Think of McDavid or Connor. In the 1978 Stanley Cup Final, Don Cherry of the Bruins ordered his guys to raise their sticks and take Lafleur down by any means. But you can't pin down lightning. He floated through checks and scored with cold confidence that froze arenas entire. When he received the puck in his own end, he'd pull away like he'd been shot, golden hair streaming behind him as defenders stumbled in his wake. Montreal would rise before he even hit the blue line. When he scored, the Forum erupted in a thunderous cheer that echoed across that city. He wasn't skating, he was starring. His playoff glory matched his regular season dominance. During Montreal's consecutive Stanley Cup run from 76 to 79, he wasn't just an ingredient, he was the secret sauce. In 1976, he led all players with 17 playoff goals. The next 2 years, he piled on 26 and 21 points, including the 1977 Conn Smythe Trophy for playoff MVP. But no single moment burns brighter than Game 7 of the 1979 semifinal against Boston. Trailing late, his smooth stride over the line, and then a laser that beat goalie Gil Gilbert, and the Forum erupted. CBC's Danny Gallivan captured the exact magic. He gives it to Lemaire, back to Lafleur. Woo! That shot tied the game, rescued the dynasty, and eventually sent Montreal to their 4th straight cup. That goal is still counted among the most clutch in NHL history. But the bigger story? Lafleur's swagger defined the era. Between periods, he'd light one up. After games, he'd dance through Crescent Street until sunrise. Then he'd return the next day, time the clock, and dominate again. He made it look effortless, though we know only legends pull off that illusion. During the mid to late 70s, when disco ruled and Montreal glittered, he was the spark at the center of it all. He remains the franchise's regular season leader in assists, 728, and points, 1,246. But those numbers were earned not by a long, slow burn. They were forged in a furnace of pure dominance. The Forum was his chapel, Crescent Street his playground. Montreal's infamous Crescent Street sprang to life by 1967, but in the 70s it had exploded. Neon signs, velvet ropes, champagne showers, disco blasts, and Lafleur in the thick of it. Bartenders poured his favorite drink. DJs cued his personal anthem. The clubs where he was a fixture, Peel Pub, Casa Pedro, Le Fouquet, crowded with hopefuls wanting a glimpse of the man who could command an arena and a dance floor in the same night. Stories of him slipping into his tailored suit, jumping into a Cadillac plastered with decals, and tearing down to the next venue until 3 a.m. are endless. Then he'd show up next morning and still skate like he had reserve energy hidden in his skates. He smoked, he drank, he broke every rule, and still led the league in points. Hall of Famer Serge Savard once summed it up. Guy could go all night, barely sleep, and still score a hat trick. No one else could. He didn't pretend to be a role model, he just lived his truth, and Montreal worshipped him for it. The commercial world noticed too. He became a walking brand. Cigarette ads, beer spots, magazine covers, department store campaigns, you name it. But behind the glamour, tension was simmering. Scotty Bowman, legendary coach, demanded structure, discipline, a system. That level of control rankled Lafleur's free spirit. Bowman's Canadiens won at least 45 games every season under his reign, and captured 4 straight cups from 76 to 79. But the friction was real. The magician on ice didn't always mesh with the chess master behind the bench. It was a paradox. The strictest coach paired with the most untamed superstar. That uneasy partnership held for a glorious moment, and then it collapsed. In September 1978, ownership opted to promote Irving Grundman to GM over Bowman, a move that shocked the foundation. Bowman resigned, and nearly simultaneously key veterans began drifting away. That's when the dynasty began unraveling. Under the surface glitter, the grind was peeling Lafleur's edges. His nights out became less celebration, more surrender. Pressure was mounting to keep perfection rolling, and as the 70s ended, that pressure only intensified. By 1980, signs of decline were unmistakable. Montreal's streak died in a brutal 7-game loss to Minnesota in the second round. End of an era. Lafleur struggled the next season. Battles with nagging injuries and the defensive shift demanded by Lemaire left his scoring off by nearly half. A frightening crash on March 24, 1981. He drifted asleep behind the wheel of his Cadillac and smashed into a highway fence. A metal post piercing the windshield and grazed his ear was a sign of too much living on autopilot. Rumors say that escaped death shook him. He and Lemaire never saw eye to eye. Lemaire's emphasis on defense clashed with his style, creating a rift that never healed. By 1985, feeling boxed in, Lafleur requested a trade. Montreal fans rose up in protest. GM Savard refused to move his hero. With no path forward, Lafleur felt pushed out. He walked away, publicly stung, privately relieved. It looked like rebellion masked exhaustion. It felt like the end of an intoxicating ride. He returned home to a locker room devoid of legends. It was now his weight to bear alone. That 1981 season, nagging injuries chipped away at his brilliance, and the usual crackle of his game felt dull. He still hit 50 goals in 79-80, but the spark, his edge, was fading. Then came the crash that could have ended it all. On March 24th, 1981, he nodded off in his Cadillac and slammed into a highway fence. A metal beam pierced the windshield, grazing his ear by mere inches. In that frozen moment, his mortality screamed back at him, and symbols of his wild life crashed around him. Still, he played on. Pulled hamstrings, throat illness, groin pulls. But the half-step he once owned drifted away. The team was shifting too. Jacques Lemaire, once his line mate, now ran the show behind the bench from 83 to 85. Lemaire insisted on disciplined two-way play, a philosophy that drained Lafleur's freedom. Demoted off the power play, benched from the top line, he saw the player he was once become a stranger in his own role. Lemaire promised to restore him, but never did. And in Montreal's ice-cold quiet, he felt discarded. In early 84-85, after scoring just 2 goals in 19 games, he quietly stepped away at 33. No banner farewells, no confetti, just silence. It felt wrong, but perhaps it was overdue. He had given everything and asked for more than the system could offer. He disappeared into civilian life, trying to chase meaning outside the rink, starting a helicopter charter business, popping up on TV, but nothing landed. The roar of the Forum haunted him. The smell of fresh ice beckoned. By 1988, 4 years gone, he realized he couldn't quit yet. And so came one of NHL history's most cinematic comebacks. Not with Montreal, but with New York. The Canadiens passed, but Rangers GM Phil Esposito stepped in. On October 6, 1988, at age 37, in a balding frame and crisp suit, Guy Lafleur glided onto Madison Square Garden ice. It looked different, but his eyes were the same, burning alive. He scored 18 goals and added 27 assists in 67 games. Not uncanny numbers, but enough to remind everyone that the magic lingered. The real highlight came back in Montreal. Wearing blue, white, and red Rangers colors, he ripped a 2-goal game at the Forum and drew a standing ovation as he touched the puck. The building shook with cheers. No boos, just pure reverence. It felt like a king had returned home wearing a rival's crown. Then in 1989, destiny called him back to Quebec, this time with the Nordiques. He wasn't the flashiest player anymore, but there were flickers. 24 goals and 38 assists for 62 points over 2 seasons on a struggling franchise. He mentored Joe Sakic, passing on soul alongside skill. He wasn't just playing, he was shaping. Even with the worst record in the league, his presence elevated the room. In his final game, the fans cheered each step he took. He exited not with numbers, but with narrative. 1,353 points across his career. That number meant nothing compared to the comeback, the redemption, the heart. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1988. Before even that second retirement, a rare honor. His number 10 was retired by Montreal in 85. He wept in silence as a thunderous ovation rolled through the stands. And in Quebec, he was more than an athlete. He was symbol, pride, folklore. When lung cancer struck in 2019 and he finally passed on April 22nd, 2022, at age 70, the ice world in Quebec fell silent. A national funeral was held in Montreal May 3rd, where fans cheered, politicians attended, and a tribute procession moved from Bell Center to the cathedral. Thousands lined city streets chanting "Guy, Guy, Guy" as his flag-draped casket passed by. Still, lingering behind the applause, the legacy endured. A rebel on ice, a man unbound, a legend who wrote his own script. He didn't fit molds, he shattered them. He didn't wait for scripts, he improvised. And in every breakaway, every celebration, he left a piece of himself behind. But what did the man behind the icon really bring home? By his peak, he was securing deals, not just domes. His financial portfolio included a stable of vehicles, classic Cadillacs in his early days, later a luxury SUV collection for his Quebec estate. He was known to own a Mercedes-Benz and a sleek Porsche, symbolizing that glide he'd mastered on the ice. On his wrist, he wore high-end Swiss timepieces, an Audemars Piguet Royal Oak, and a Rolex Daytona, both symbols of a champion's taste. He owned a lakeside property outside Montreal, and sources say he even had access to a private jet through charter, ensuring swift travel for endorsements and appearances. His business ventures expanded beyond helicopters. He held stakes in regional golf courses and was an occasional investor in sports bars and tobacco-friendly sponsorships, carefully navigating endorsement rules. He joined brand deals with Canadian beer brands and lifestyle products during and after his career, turning the rebel aura into marketing gold. He also carried robust health and life insurance, a choice shaped by his heart surgery in 2019 and lung health concerns, planning that turned tragic. His financial blueprint teaches us a few lessons. Diversify early, lean into brand when your fame peaks, ensure your health when fame fades. It's a masterclass in turning fleeting stardom into long-term wealth. From bursting into the NHL as a fearless phenom, to stepping away as a changed man, to returning with fire in his eyes, it's a journey that speaks to transformation, resilience, and legacy. He started as the wild-haired speedster, became the reluctant mentor, the comeback king, the legend mourned by thousands. His life reflected two truths. Greatness evolves, and true legacy is emotional, not just statistical. He leaves behind a model of living boldly, failing publicly, rising again, and building something lasting. When you remember Guy Lafleur, don't just think of the goals or the trophies. Remember how he refused to vanish quietly. He staged final acts. He wrote his exit in italics. And as the crowd at his funeral chanted as the lights flickered along Crescent Street in his honor, you have to ask, what makes someone immortal? He knew. Imperfections, rebellion, brilliance, and above all, heart. In a world that tries to contain chaos, he became chaos in motion. And that's why championships, adoration, and history found him. His story ends not on ice, but in the echo of Guy, 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 resonating across generations. If this story moved you, drop a like, share a memory in the comments, and hit subscribe, because we've got more untold stories of icons who lived louder than life itself.